Well, funny story. Since you mentioned opening a co-working space in KK, and I was just talking about this at before we came up here. So today I came by yesterday. This is my second visit, I think, to KK. The first time I came with my family, we went more to the islands and stuff. And this time around, we decided to go more on the mountains, you know, the nature park. So talking about opening a co-working space in KK, my new mission is to open a co-working space in a dairy farm. I went to Desa today. It's awesome. It's like, wow, big open spaces. You can work free, fast internet, and they have unlimited supply of milk. Anyway, welcome. My name is Kamal. Hello. I don't usually sound like this. I had a bit of a flu past few days, and I'm just about recovering. So today what I'll be talking about is a piece of technology called Backbone.js. How many of you in the room are developers, web developers? Well, good. So this talk is going to be quite technical, but it's not going to go very deep. This talk, I'll show some code. So if you guys don't read code, then it's all right. Otherwise, I'll just give you an overview of it. And I think hopefully you get something out of it, even if you are not a programmer. So I'm a programmer. I've been doing Ruby on Rails professionally as a consulting firm for the past 3 years. Recently, I set up a co-working space in Kelana Jaya, and the space is large enough to hold a few teams. We have several startups. That's me and my daughter. Several startups working off there, mostly freelancers, and it's mostly an extension of BitFluent's need for an office. So I've been running as one person for the past 3 years, and then last year I worked with one of my clients in Singapore. They're called Vicky. They're actually one of my biggest, highest profile client. They just recently raised 20 million in Series B, 20 million USD from top tier investors like Greylock and Andreessen Horowitz. These guys, so what they do, they run a online video streaming service. And what's different about them is that they get exclusive content from publishers directly. Excuse me. And they have a very active community around it who translate subtitles and create subtitles for series. So they originally were from, the co-founders were Korean, so they have a lot of Korean content, and Korean dramas are huge around the world. But they're getting a lot of more content around the world. I think they've signed agreements with publishers for content from India, so there's a lot, like, it opens up a lot of Hindi movie, you know, and Japan, so there's a lot of anime coming. And like Korean drama, for example, is hugely popular in Latin America and the Middle East. So when a popular video goes up, within 24 hours, it's translated into 49 different languages, including Klingon, actually. Yeah. So, and they also recently announced deals with BBC, so they're getting BBC content and so on. So these guys are doing really well. They're in Singapore right now. So what we did for them last year was to move their platform off CakePHP onto Ruby on Rails. They were facing real performance issues with CakePHP, so they had a bottleneck. Anybody do CakePHP here? Yeah. So if you do CakePHP, you hire me. We do it Ruby on Rails, and then you can get 20 million. that 20 million also is 1 year after they raised Series A of 4.3 million. Anyway, the real story though today is, real story today is a technology that we use behind the startup that we helped a few weeks ago. It's a local company called Bill Please. They are funded by Cradle. And what Bill Please is a personal finance management. You guys know Mint. That's what they want to do. But they have grander plans. What we did for them was a very small portion. And the technology that we use is Backbone.js. So Backbone.js, we chose that. The client didn't specifically ask for Backbone.js, but I wanted to learn Backbone.js. And I like to use projects as a way to learn stuff. So I get to learn and get paid for it at the same time. So with Backbone.js, we are able to do, it's too big for the screen. So this is how it looks like if you have, so this is a real account. And what you do is you take a picture of your receipt, or you add, and then you send to an email, it gets added here. Or you can use the add expense and you start adding manually, uploading, and so on. But what it allows us to do is very, very responsive UI. So for example, I can switch between paid and due and overdue. And this stuff is like super fast. And you think it's going to different pages because you're looking at the URLs and they're changing, but it's really not. It's all on one page. You can do even complex stuff, like say I want to do, let me filter all my expenses for restaurants, hit that, and then see restaurants and maybe restaurants and how much I spend on restaurants and entertainment. What is entertainment here? Let's say auto. I don't have any. But all this stuff, all this like dynamic filtering, updating, if you look at the total as well, that also updates based on what you choose. So for example, if I've had any receipts for vet services, I have none, it's no expense and it's zero total. But if I go back to restaurants, it updates in real time to just the total that it needs. So how is all this possible? This is all possible by this thing called Backbone.js. Backbone.js here. So this is the part where I start showing you some code. But before that, how do you get started into Backbone.js? If you're interested in letting, excuse me, a bit dry. Oh, there's a bottle of water. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So you want to learn how to use Backbone.js in your projects, don't go to this site. Seriously, this site is good for API lookup. If you want to find out what APIs, what methods there are. If you want to, what really got me really understanding what Backbone.js does, how it works, is get this screencast from Peepcode. It's $12 US. Excuse me. But it's worth every cent of it. It's, I think, a 1 hour and a half kind of tutorial. Goes through the basics of Backbone.js. They're very good. Peepcode, I support them all the time. I buy a lot of stuff from them. This stuff is DRM free. So maybe one of you guys can get together and share it or something. They start building all the building blocks from the bottom, right? Build all the models, build all the collections, build all the view controllers, build all the routers, and then you have your app, and then you link it up, and then you can switch between pages, and all is awesome. But the approach that I took with Backbone.js is more of a progressive enhancement approach. So when we started, and that's going to be like the crux of what I'm going to be talking about today, is that when we started, we basically had this entire page already working, and we use Ruby on Rails. So if you guys are familiar with, like, even doesn't have to be Ruby on Rails, but web development, basically you have a template, and then you have the things behind it where you do your you sum up the totals, and you can show the totals there. For each row, this is an array of builds, and for each row of that, you display a little record here that shows you what category it is, how much it is, what the name of the category, and actions that you can do to it. So So when you have something like this, then probably it's a good idea to inject some Backbone.js. So for example, to look at what is a good candidate for Backbone.js is like, okay, so what is on this page that can really, it doesn't need to be pre-rendered from the server side. You suppose traditional web development is that there's a server, right? Your app all runs on the server. The guy who runs so the user who's using the browser requests a page. Your server does all of the pulling all the stuff from the database, formatting into a template, and then push it back out to the client as one complete piece. And then the browser just renders it. If the guy does something, click on a link or change some state of something, goes back to the server, comes back. And there's a lot of network that goes across. If you really love like the performance optimizations, like how to tune up, how to make your sites fast, you really want to minimize that, right? So with Backbone.js, instead what you want to try to do is, what are things here that I can render later, where I can actually offload to the web browser to render. So the first thing I did actually was to render the total here. So the total here is made up of the total that's visible on this page. There's some extra rules, but never mind. So what do I need to get to be able to render this? It's basically, I need to first get access to the data as a model, right? And that's easy because I already have the data that I used to render the template originally. I just need to pass the data along then to the page as a raw JSON string, for example, and then wrap it up in a model. So a model is basically for example, on this page, a model would be a build. So each of this is one model, one model, one model. And a collection of that model is what Backbone.js calls a collection. And so if I can combine them up in a collection, then I can start doing I can run a method to do a summation over the total. Now, you guys do jQuery, right? So if you imagine if I were to do this in jQuery, I could have done this without Backbone.js to get a total. Traditionally, what I would do, let's say if I were to have to manage this manually, is I look for a class for this column, iterate all of them, remove all the RM, make that string, the 50.00 string to an integer or a float, sum them all together, and then I get the value. Then I have to re-render it with, put RM on it and all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of process work that you don't need to do. If you have models, you're actually working with the perimeter data types, right? You actually have the actual amount values for each model, which you can just easily sum up all of them. So let me just show you some code. So the code for the total view, so is this, right? So this is the bill's total view. And this looks a bit different. This is CoffeeScript, which if you guys are doing JavaScript, I would highly recommend using CoffeeScript. It's so much cleaner. So basically what you build is a class called, right now I call it bill's total view, which is an extension of a Backbone view. And all it does, what it really does is, actually let me show you where I instantiate it. So bill's total view, I instantiate the bill's total view with a collection. And this is the particular collection that I have. And the filtered paid user bills is basically this stuff here, every one of these rows. I just instantiate it, and then this is jQuery if you guys are, so the selector, and replace with the view dot render, and get the element of it. So render, and what all render does is basically say, replace the content, the HTML of this view with the word total, colon, and then put span and RM. And then here's where I do a little formatting of the number of the value. So I use this library called accounting, format the number of the collection, and all this extra stuff that I need to filter by the paid, remove the ones that are supposed to be excluded, get the total, and that's it. So that's from a very basic part. So that's all a view does. So a view really is responsible for a small piece of DOM in the whole page. So it's common for a Backbone.js powered site to have multiple controllers, view controllers. So in fact, this total is one view controller. It only cares about updating this total. This tab element here is a view controller by itself. It manages its state. So if I click on something, it knows that, okay, let me highlight the second guy. If I click on overdue, let me highlight the overdue. And the total that gets here is also managed by itself. It itself manages that. It knows how to filter from all the bills that are on this page. Let me only select the ones that are overdue and what's the total. Because, for example, I can mark a due bill as paid. If I click on that, immediately he updates the total less the guy that was just paid. So this whole section is a view by itself. Each of this category submission is also a view. So that's how you start looking at start decomposing a page. Okay, this is a view, this is a view, this is a view. What do they care about? What piece of the collection what facet of the data they care about? And do they care about what happens to the collection? So one thing is a view knows about collection, but then what, right? So it gets interesting when you can actually bind to stuff. So once I know about collection, I can then be interested in, so if I remove a model, the model's remove method will also bubble up towards the collection, which also will what's the word? Bind trigger, which will trigger also a remove event. So by having this line here, collection bind remove, I basically set up the view to listen to this interesting event. So for example, if I remove this, want to delete the depends, yes. Oh, I don't have internet connection. Oh yeah, it did it anyway. The total immediately changed once the guy got removed from the page, because I hooked up that this guy, this view controller is interested in remove actions. So I'm going to do that again. It updates itself in a few seconds. Yeah. So that's once you really understand the power that this gives you, it's like, wow, okay, along this entire page of complex interactions between them, you don't have to manage. Can you imagine like your traditional jQuery page? For this to happen, for example, if I filter stuff, let's say restaurants again, that the total changes, this view changes, and what happens if I start deleting things? I have to remember that if there's no more, that I should show a blank slate. All of that stuff, if managed in traditional jQuery, it's like one long piece of this click bind goes for this click. If this happens, do this. You have to do all the logic in one click, right? For example, yeah, if you click on delete, okay, what happens now? If this guy is the last one, show a blank slate and also update this total and also do this. That's really unmanageable. But if you package it all up as a Backbone.js project, then each of this only cares about its own little world, right? And its own little piece of DOM in the page. So something happens, oh, I just have to update my total. The guy, the one that manages the rows, oh, there's no more rows to show a blank slate. So they're all independent. So this is great if you have multiple developers working on the front end. So some people can be working on just this part, some people can be working on the filters, some people can be working on the tabs, and it brings, it allows, how would I say, the domain of front-end development can now be shared among more people, right? Rather than just this one dude who does the HTML, CSS, and JS. Now actually your back-end developers, because working with this feels a bit like back-end development,
So usually, traditionally, you have like where backend developers don't really do the stuff what front-end developers do. But now with CoffeeScript and now with Backbone.js, they can, and they should. So the other part that's interesting is that, so it's great for what's on one page, but let's say if you have a group of things that you want to change, swap out. Let's say if you click on some different sections and you want the whole thing to like go away and replace with a bunch of other Backbone.js stuff, you would use a router, and you use routes. So let me show you a router. So this is a router. This manages the whole page, whatever that happens on the page. If I go to a URL, I can set up routes like this that it recognizes. If I see the URL looks like bills, paid, and what's the month, year, then execute the paid function. If it looks like bills due, then go to due. So for example, if I go to due here, bills due, this is actually calling the due function. So due function is here, and I set up, if you look at the due function, I set up the title to be due expenses. If you look page later, I hide the controls where you can go back and forth between months. I hide the consumption thing. So this is like basic jQuery again. This is just normal jQuery stuff, most of it. Hide the totals, and I create a new due bill list view. So I sort of separate them up. For due bills, this is a different list view. For overdue, this is a different list view. For paid, this is a different list view. And I just get a table and I just replace the contents of it with due bill list views template, basically. And that's how you get this page. If I click on overview, it's mostly the same. Click on paid, then you get back to this page. And if you look at paid, it's the longest one because I have to set up a lot of things. But otherwise, really, it's pretty much normal front-end development. It's just more organized. And definitely, it's awesome to actually see things, move, like be refreshed on the page like really fast. And one thing that I wanted to show you, which I'm forgetting right now, is if you do like Rails, Ruby on Rails, Backbone's model system is kind of weird because it split up models and collections. So models just care about the model and it has limited things that you can do to the model. You can update an attribute. But I think if you want to save it, you have to add it to a collection. In Rails, it's all the same, right? Like you have, let's say, a bill is your model. It also takes care of saving. It also takes care of finding back from the database. In Backbone, they split it up. So you have models and you have collections. So that's one thing that took me a while. Like I don't understand why they had to split it up. But now I actually use some parts of it to, like, the split actually helped. But if you don't like this, there's another one, Spine. I don't have internet. There's one more called Spine.js, which is a bit nicer. The author of Spine.js recently got hired at Twitter. So you can, Twitter's been moving. If you look at Twitter's site, it's not Backbone. They built their own stuff, but the Twitter website is all single page app, yeah, and the mobile app as well. So definitely when he's there, you see more awesome things come out from that. So I'm a bit rambling and my thoughts are a bit incoherent, but I'm gonna blame the flu. I see some nods, but I'm not sure if stuff is actually getting through. But anyway, check out this this startup. I think they're gonna go places. And if you have like bills, you run. So yeah, a lot of people were putting their hands up for running businesses, and you know how awesome it is when you run a business. You can collect all your bills and charge it as business expense. But you can't be asked to take, to always record it. Just take a picture and send it off. Let them record it for you. It's all organized and categorized.